is when these offerings are recorded because somebody couldn't come, or because the school was doing something different. They have an opportunity to view it at another time. So I would say that really, I'm estimating that it's 90, maybe the percentage is even higher, of all of our professional development now is being done synchronously. So, yeah. I mean, do we have any questions? The only time, I mean, there are occasional webinars that are recorded. Diane did a particular training, and one school, for example, could not attend because they were doing something else, and it interfered with their schedule. So Diane recorded the session so that they could, utilize it another time. But every other school was on live. So we find, and this way there can be conversations, they can ask questions, and each one of these ladies here has been doing a large amount of training. I mean, there are some days I don't get the chance to talk to them because they are on the computer with the group who are working with them in this particular field or this particular workshop. And they're having conversations and dialogue. And so far, that has been what's really been working. The teachers are looking at that. It's harder for them to watch a webinar for an hour or 2 hours than it is to really sit down and have interaction. So that's basically where we are.
So what do we say to like the parents who are interested in the asynchronous learning or independent study? Are we working on that, or is that just something that we discourage? Like, what do we say to those parents?
Well, first of all, for the particular workshops that they are, and I'm calling them workshops, but we call them, professional learning sessions in a variety of topics. My understanding is that there is a place on the website where all of these that are recorded are being put up. And what I will do is make sure that Ralph is in the process. His folks are working, day and night. They are really shoring up every school. They're shoring up every learning session with the technology. And I know that he hasn't gotten to put everything up, but there is a site, there is a professional development site on our district website that can be accessed. And what I will do is just make sure that it can be accessed by parents as well.
So sometimes I'm hearing, I'm sorry, did anybody else have anything to add? That, and I wasn't sure, I'm not sure that I understand, that there weren't enough offerings for the asynchronous. Can you speak to that?
Well, again, because of these offerings are meant for teachers, and the teachers are in school for real time. So what happens is on Monday, let's just take Monday. Well, let's take the full day, like election day, when there was the professional development all day, and teachers, principals needed, and principals and assistant principals needed to work with their staff on particular topics that are applicable to their particular schools. So it may be scheduling, it may be something that the principal has observed that he feels that the whole school needs, and there are particular topics that they have, that they have planned. However, in addition to that, because in many schools, that doesn't cover all of the teachers. So, for example, and Stacy is here, she can certainly indicate, but Stacy will work sometimes with just her special education teachers. Or she will work her department will work sometimes with just the counselors. Or, there are special groups of teachers, but they are available to be involved in synchronous learning because they're in school. So when we have the Monday afternoons, where there is professional development time, which has this year been allocated, once again, the teachers, the counselors, paraprofessionals, when it's appropriate, are involved, they're available. So they don't really need as much of the asynchronous as they would if they were not available. Even if, whether they're in school or whether they're remote, the platforms that are used for the professional development are available to all of them. Whether the teachers are in school, whether the paras are home, it doesn't matter. They have the ability, the link to that session is sent to all, and they're able to tune in. So when we're talking about enough of the asynchronous, we find that we really don't need that quite as much. The only time that we use that is when we have, for example, I believe we had AimsWeb. AimsWeb had a webinar. I don't want to trip over my words, but AimsWeb had a webinar that they were asking, which was asynchronous. Yes, where teachers were invited to sit and work in teams and watch the webinar, and that was going to instruct them on how to look at their own data when the data were finally produced into the district. But aside from that, the only thing I can think of for the moment, unless somebody else can think of something else, is when we record for people who just can't be there. That's all. So I don't know that we have an audience for the asynchronous, except when we are told that a school can't be there, and we record just in case. Maybe they want to watch it again. Maybe they need additional, maybe they took notes the first time, but it's available for them to kind of go over it. But when I walk through the curriculum and instruction department, and even when I go over to see Stacy, they are on the computer, and with in the Teams platform, you can see faces, and people are talking to each other. And if they don't have an opportunity to ask the questions, then the learning may not really be as valuable for them. So, does that answer your question, Ms. Harris?
It does.
Okay.
I do have one other. I don't know if anybody else wanted to jump in. I don't want to take over. So, I have to ask this. Does it filter down to the children too? So just say if a child missed something in a particular class, are they able to go back and watch something as well? Maybe not in this particular, like the adult or the teacher setting, but for the children who may need a little bit of extra something.
Yes, so we know that in schools, we're trying to encourage our teachers to really look at the students and to really involve them and to bring them in and engage them in the instruction. But we do know that it may not be feasible to be on for 7 hours a day. So there are times when the teachers will provide a lesson, they will what we call post that lesson, and that the students can access it. I think that actually happens a lot, although I've walked through high school classes, at all the high schools as a matter of fact, and have been very pleased at the fact that we have students who are home and who are remote, who are really joining in to the classroom, joining into the lessons. They're actually there. However, I think that the schools, I can't swear that it's being done in every single class, but I know that many of the teachers do post their assignments so that the students can go back. A number of teachers all through the district have something they call office hours, so that the students can look at the posted assignments and can come back and have an opportunity to talk to the teachers, either one-to-one or two-to-one if there's several children have the same issue. So it's hard because on one hand we just want to make sure that all of the children are not just getting recorded assignments.
No, of course, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, so this goes back to the tier 2 and the tier 3 learning. So just say we had a lesson on Native Americans,
Right.
and somebody just didn't quite get it or they missed something. Is there something where they can go and just get the enhancement? Not necessarily something totally different,
Right.
but the enhancement. So again, just thinking along the lines of tier 2
Right.
and tier 3, because again, there's lots of students who just aren't getting it in tier 1.
That's right.
And so maybe, the teachers are busy, they have contractual obligations. So is there something that they can go to online to help, go from the synchronous to the asynchronous, where they're kind of listening on their
that's clearly it happens mostly in the upper grades, in the secondary schools, in the middle school, and the high schools, where the teachers, again, post those lessons. But I do want to say that I think it's really important, so if a child, sometimes that reteach, what we call reteach, or the opportunity to see it again, is very helpful. Sometimes we all have to read something several times until we really figure it out or get the meaning. However, I think that the office hours and the opportunity to be able to speak to a teacher to say, I didn't get it, I've read it several times, I need some help, is really important too. So, I think the answer is yes. We do have opportunities for students to go back, to those lessons. But but we also have opportunities for them to really meet with teachers. And we need to just make sure that, that's happening across the board.
May I add just one thing? We currently have access to a tool called Nearpod for our teachers.
I'm sorry, what's it called?
Nearpod. And we are continuously providing support to our teachers around the functionality of that resource. And when teachers, one of the best features of that tool is that those teachers that are creating a lot of their lessons through Google Slides, which is the majority of our teachers at this point, you can upload that slide deck to Nearpod, and you can submit it as a link, and the student can go through some of those lessons and activities as if they were in the classroom as well. And it does collect the data, even if the student is doing it asynchronously. So there is an option. We are working on supporting teachers across the district in K through 12 in all content areas. So it is an avenue for them to use in the same fashion that Sandy was talking about, as another layer of support.
Yeah.
I love hearing the buzz in the teaching staff, what the ways they're working on how to connect with students in multiple avenues. And I see it with my own children. I want to compliment you. I see them being engaged on an individual basis. What do you think about this? How do you feel? What's your goal today? Or what? I mean, it's extraordinary what our teachers are doing.
Yes.
And I had a student in my network reach out today and say, I don't know about this social emotional learning, but it's great. My science teacher asked me how my mood was and how I wanted to feel on Friday, and I thought about it, and I'm really excited about it. And I went, okay, this is working.
That's
So
great.
I want to thank you. I know you're probably exhausted, but it's working.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for
And I
that.
just want to make sure for equity that it's working across the board.
Exactly.
So that we're not hearing one school, one teacher,
Exactly.
or that it's kind of working. So that's really wonderful, especially for kids who have parents who have that voice
Right.
and don't mind
Right.
saying it. But for
Right.
the other kids who may not and may just need to go back for that extra support, I don't want to miss the quiet ones.
Right. Thank you. That's a good point. And please be assured that whatever we do, whatever we put out, is across the board.
Oh, I believe it is across the board,
Yeah.
But you have different kids, and you all know this, that learn
Yeah.
differently, or parents who, they couldn't be there doing this, but maybe the parent wants to sit with them on going back to the asynchronous learning to see a video later or something like that, because being out in the community, you hear the great and you hear the not so great. And it's not for me to judge, it's just for me to, put it out and say,
bring it up.
that quiet person that's sitting in the corner that may not say anything, or, well, not in the corner now, but on Zoom that may not say anything, or they may not have the parents who know how to say anything. Let's make sure that we're finding out, like, what's your mood today? How are you feeling about the learning, or something like that? So across the board, we're hearing the same things.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any future consideration being given to utilizing what teachers have done to replace ingenuity?
Oh.
In the sense of looking at opportunities where someone need to access a lesson posted if they were quarantined away with 6 hours for a test.
Yes.
Like you're not gonna be back home to catch teachers' hours. And then looking and pivoting, to these type of examples, any student that would need credit recovery, in the sense of living with who does the work the best, our teachers, and I don't know what we spend on ingenuity, but I don't imagine the classes are responsive as teachers are in lessons that are appropriate now.
Yeah.
And I know get into it later, but that was one question I had, in terms of what we're recording.
Shall I I'll try to answer it a little bit now, and then maybe we can talk about it more later.
Actually, I think that's,
Or do we want?
that's our segue, so.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
I'll start. Okay. So anyhow, well, first of all, Edgenuity courses are registered. And, you know, so what it would take for the teachers to create a particular course, you raise a very interesting point, because, and I didn't number the pages, so I apologize. But if you turn, there's a section almost right in the middle called Credit Recovery through Edgenuity on the PowerPoint.
About how many pages?
Okay, I'm sorry, Sherelle. My
We can count.
There's like 6 pages in.
For, Sherelle particularly asked me, and I forgot to.
That's a-
It's after the,
I got it.
Page
yeah.
9, it's about the 9th to 10th page. Credit we start there. And, I mean, what I tried to do here, you know, in my research, is to give you, to show you, for example, the courses that are being offered from Edgenuity now. And also, and this is November, and that are being accessed, and then the active courses. And then on the following 2 pages, we have courses that were accessed last year. You can see that there is a greater variety of courses for children to access. These courses are registered, and they basically have attached to them, you know, approved curriculum that is allowable for the credit recovery. What I found out is that teachers can modify these courses, which is gonna go to what you're suggesting. Teachers actually can modify these courses to zero in on what it is the student needs. And I gave you, that was a little bit of a surprise for me. So I gave you, for the next page after that, I gave you an example of a student who needed credit recovery in the area of pre-calculus. I mean, this was just one. And what happened was, evidently, and was having difficulty in the area in math of inequalities. If you look at this, that inequalities. So what evidently the teacher did was zero in to the taking from the full course, took the portion on inequalities, and gave that student the opportunity to take the course in on that particular strand, and then to take the assessment on that particular strand. And so what you can see, and again, I didn't, the pages aren't numbered, but actually we can see that when they look at the score is weighted only for that particular piece. So now to what you're suggesting, I don't know, it would be a lot of work for the teachers to do what you're suggesting. It might be better because of the fact that the teachers themselves have created the course, you know? The process for getting that piece registered would be something we'd really have to look into. But it is actually something, especially now, when all of this took place, we weren't in a pandemic. Children were learning in real time. Nobody was learning in a remote situation. So I'm not sure if it can be accomplished, but I'm suggesting that perhaps this is something that we could actually investigate.
And the way it's utilized now, students who are enrolled in these classes, they take these classes outside of the school day?
No, not necessarily. They can take it because they can, but there has to be a teacher. There has to be a teacher assigned to each one of these courses. So the teacher is from the school. Somebody has to monitor them, you know, as they're taking these courses.
There is a teacher assigned in our school if the student has this in their schedule. So right now, how it works is if the student needs an initial credit type of course because it doesn't fit into their schedule, or maybe we don't have a teacher or a this is one of the ways that we've been utilizing Edgenuity during the school year. Now, I oversaw the high school program for credit recovery, so if there's questions on that too, around the curriculum and how we design that curriculum, I can go into that as well. The beauty of Edgenuity and Pitfall is that all of this can be customized based on the needs of the district. Your initial credit classes as well as your credit recovery classes. We have the ability and the authority to turn on and off all settings when it comes to curriculum design, assessment creation, composite score grading under the hood.
So the point is though that what we are looking at in addition to this, we want to make sure that the children, when they're taking a credit recovery, that they're taking something that is rigorous and they're taking something that is really going to that is really going to what's the word? That's really going to indicate to us, if they pass, that they really learned what the course, what the part of the course is. So Edgenuity has been used in that way. We do not use it for original credit. So we have only used it, and we are going to continue to only use it for credit recovery. What we are looking at, though, which might be of interest to you, is the fact that, and we would come to you, of course, once it is developed, is that in some of the schools, there are courses that can't be offered because of several factors. Number one, there may be too few children who want to take it. And, we're denying them the opportunity to take some courses because we don't have enough. And budgetarily, we can't hire a teacher for two children. So that's one thing. Another reason may be that we just couldn't find a teacher to teach a particular course. Another thing is that some of the high schools, as they're building out their pathways, and creating more opportunities in the school, may need a particular may want to offer another course. So there are several reasons. So we are looking, and we're beginning to work with the high school principals to talk to them about what courses they might want, what courses we could, and we're going to, once they give us that information and they're beginning to send it in, we're going to look at other companies for original credit. And, and we're going to actually have them come in because we will have very stringent criteria. We want to make sure that the courses are, in my mind, that they're rigorous, that they really need to be rigorous courses. Otherwise, what's the point? We don't want to graduate students who can't do the work just for the sake of graduating them. We want to make sure that anybody who takes a course and takes a course online is taking something that is, that really helps them to learn whatever the course content is. So we're going to be taking a look at that. We're going to be working on that. And of course, it may come out after the program of study piece, and of course, we'll come to you for approval, and with a full picture. But that will be different from Edgenuity. Edgenuity we're going to keep, and we're going to keep it for credit recovery for those students who need it.
I have a question, really coming from a place of ignorance, so please humor me. We experience Edgenuity through the middle school, but I haven't yet experienced it at the high school level. In the middle school, often there's 4 questions on the quiz, and sometimes there's a trick question. You end up with a 75%, which for some students can be a devastating thing because they are not used to getting that quiz. So, at the high school level, are the quizzes and the tests more full so that they have an opportunity to score?
Except for yes they are.
Okay.
But however, when they modify the course, so they're only taking the assessment that pertains to the part of the course that they missed. So that would then limit the, it would make the assessment part smaller.
When you said under the hood, you made the suggestion that perhaps we could set quizzes with a certain number of questions, even though you limit the content, but expand it.
Projects, tests, assignments, written prompts.
So there's a robust option.
There's a whole robust, and it depends a lot on, and there's projects where they actually have to submit, like a presentation to the teacher for review. So they cannot move on until the teacher actually connects with the content
That's
and
great.
evaluates
And
it.
I'm wondering, again, going back to what Godfrey said, we know we have different kind of learners in the classroom.
Right.
We have people who learn from reading, through hearing, and of course doing.
Right.
Can we modify how the course is received? You said there are these multiple different ways. Can we weight it differently based on the child's
Yes.
profile so that we can meet how they learn?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear, you weighted differently?
So,
And then
when a teacher's designing the course recovery and picking the materials that they want to make sure the student has to graduate from that course credit, can we look at the student profile and say, this is a student who maybe has dysgraphia, say. So we're not gonna wanna do long written assignments, but perhaps
I see.
project, some kind of experimental project or something. Can we modify to
Yes.
meet that student's learning style?
Yes,
That's great.
the answer is absolutely yes.
Great.
And again, children, they don't take these courses alone, for Edgenuity. They take them with the guidance and monitoring and support of the teacher.
Mhm.
And the fact that they can modify the courses means that they can modify the assessments. The assessment is the assessment, but the assignments,
Yeah, it's just so important when somebody's at
Yeah.
risk like that, credit recovery isn't just about recovering the credit,
Correct.
it's about recovering the person into the system.
that's true, exactly,
Is there
exactly.
anything you tracked around credit obtained? And looking at the deployment from last year, looking at who was enrolled, and the amount of credits that was restored,
Yeah, we have the data from last summer. I oversaw the high school summer program with Edgenuity and the principals and the teachers and the summer school coordinators. We do have data from last year around the number of students that were participating and the number of students that received credit.
And you're talking about the summer school?
Summer school,
Yes,
credit
but
recovery.
Godfrey, I'm going to say your
during
question.
the academic year, yeah.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
during the
I
academic year,
apologize.
thank
But
you.
you're asking
No,
about-
So-
but that was, it was inclusive.
Right,
of that.
include summer, certainly. So that's one of the questions that, and I had said to Godfrey earlier, that if there was a question for which we did not have the information now, that we would invite Jean to come and discuss this, and I will do that, because she has all of the information.
So imagine visually, if a kid, in Barbara's example, who just struggled in English and is
Yeah.
taking English for credit recovery, would it be fair to set them up in such a course, the absence of some of the enhanced supports that Sherelle was talking about, that we know evidence has showed us, they will likely need a little more of, if, when, even in presenting that as an option, as a scenario, but, just, being mindful of students that aren't as self-sufficient, and completing some of the courses. I don't know if Edgenuity is still the only option, or where we can pivot to where it makes sense. Again, in my example, if I struggle in English, leading up to the time taking credit recovery is my only option to recover credit through Edgenuity in the English class or other
So just to
mastery-based
clarify,
learning.
this summer, we did not use Edgenuity for English credit recovery.
Mhm.
It was the only content area that the teachers and the administrators felt it was not meeting their needs. And so, and to that point, there was not a lot of some of the projects and tasks in there were not flexible enough to meet the needs of some of the learners in the classroom. And so we met with both schools and we revised the curriculum based on teacher feedback before summer school started this past summer. And English was the only one that decided that Edgenuity was not gonna be meeting their needs.
Sufficient. Yeah. So, what I will do for next time is I will make sure for our next meeting that we invite the one person who has all of the data, okay, Jean Stark. We will have her come, okay? And make sure that she can talk about how many credits altogether, for the past, over the whole, the academic year so far, and maybe for last year too.
Yeah, would she also track on-track rates, in light of the new
No.
Credits set in place last year for graduation? I know in terms of the impact it had on the classes, I don't know where we landed, with the increased number of credits you have to graduate now. I don't know, in terms of the freshman class last year or this class. I don't know if there is an impact to where they are status-wise towards meeting projected amount of credits on time. You know?
That would be my question is, adding to that is, if would a child be able to have a full course, depending on the number of credits, if they're still gonna be short, and they have to do credit recovery, can they still have a full course, regular course, and then still do that on top of it, if they're gonna be short the 5 credits or the 3 credits for graduation?
That's it, those are good questions. If a student, first of all, let me back up. When we came here, both the superintendent and I were really surprised to see and surprised to learn that that the system for tracking credits, is done at the school. It's mostly in the hands of counselors. But again, in our former system, there is a very, very detailed way that that credits are tracked. And we're going to actually see there is a product that has been developed by a company called New Visions, which I know you know, yeah, that's right. And they made this tracker. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Literally, it's almost like pushing a button, and that no one has to count, and remember the No Child Left Behind? Well, we don't miss any children. No children are missed. And they can be tracked all along. The system here is not quite as refined. So I know in the beginning of the year, for example, we got some calls from high schools about students who couldn't graduate because they were missing small amounts of credits, but yet they were missing credits in areas where there was no Edgenuity course, like gym, like phys ed, or, So I think what we want to work on, and as we move along, is really developing a system with the high schools so that students don't fall through the cracks. And that so that we know before they're ready to graduate that they're missing credits and that we can program them appropriately, because then the rest of it has to do with programming. How students are programmed.
So Dr. Chase, what about homebound students?
Oh, well, we're gonna talk, Stacy's here to talk all about homebound students, so.
Can we
I
go back,
just-
sorry, before we continue that way, that is a very big concern here in Norwalk, just hearing from parents about the number of students that fall short of credits for graduation. And I know that a lot of responsibility falls on the parents, and the only reason I know that is because I have a senior now, and just the way it's tracked in the conversations between the schools and the parents and the child. Unless you literally keep that sheet of paper that was given to you in middle school to go to 9th grade and go check, and then pull it out again and go check. You have no idea until your late junior year when you're having that counselor meeting where they're saying, your son needs this, plus whatever you need for senior class. Thankfully, I don't have that problem, but there's a lot of families that I know that have fallen in there.
Right.
So I'm glad to hear that you're looking at a way to change that and upgrade that, because that's been a big issue for us.
And I would just piggyback on that and say that the thing I hear the most from constituents is getting closed out of courses that they need.
Yeah.
So really working proactively in the spring to work with the students and find out what they need, and then schedule, really work the master schedule to be responsive to that class. Because I know we had that conversation during the budgeting season with Reggie Roberts at North High, where he said, you're right, we're under-enrolled for art this year, which means we're probably going to be over-enrolled sometime in the next 3 years because the students will need to get their art credit. And we don't have a plan for that. So we need to recommend that our new counseling director have a system whereby we're really working with these families and checking in, twice a year to make sure that everybody knows where they are and whether they're on track so that we educate.
Absolutely. I'm sorry,
Or
Dennis.
even streamline your requirements and then say specific, like you said, all right, make sure that it's either a freshman or sophomore class, you have to take it, and then if you have room, you can have your specials.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of that falls where all of a sudden one child has three, they'll have art, photography, and something else, but they're not taking their core classes.
Mhm.
And then that's where they end up having issues towards the end.
Exactly.
Because, they want a fun schedule, but it's not about a fun schedule.
Yeah, and so right now, as a matter of fact, a lot of, some of that has to do with grading policies within the schools as well. And right now, I know that at McMahon, they're looking at, they're looking and talking about a new kind of grading policy that they would like to put into, into effect. They're just beginning the conversations. We haven't joined the conversations yet, but we will. Because again, if students are constantly being failed, then you have we need to see why. We need to see what the issues are and what we can do to make sure that they have opportunities not to fail. Because failing students is very often, I'm going to say it, punishing students, and very often not presenting them with opportunities to come back. So we're going to be looking at grading, we're going to be looking at tracking, the tracking the credits, and in this day and age, considering we are moving into technology, everything is technology, learning isn't, uses technology. It's unthinkable that we can't use technology in a better way to really track those credits and to make sure that when that what you described does not happen, that we know right away what students need, what they failed, what we need to make up. So so it's not that they don't graduate because they're missing 2 credits. Or in one case, a half a credit. A half credit, we had to work out something for a child who was missing half a credit. I mean, there's a whole long story that goes with this, but the fact is that we need to be able to do a better job. So that's what we are looking at right now.
And so hopefully we can get an update. But in the interest of time, because I really want to get to the homebound,
Yeah,
and
so-
we still have the Ames web data
Okay.
that we need to get to.
Well, we invited, okay, Stacy here.
Hi,
Stacy.
Stacy.
Hello.
You all know Stacy? Stacy, okay. And Stacy directs all of the information in the program for homebound students.
Okay.
So I oversee the medical homebound for all students. Even though I'm out of the special ed office, it's for all students, whether they're general ed or special education. The homebound packets come to me after they have been completed by the physician and in conjunction with the school counselor at the secondary level at middle and high school, or typically either the principal or the social worker at the elementary. And then once it comes to me, I pair them up with a tutor, depending on their age group. If they are a student with a disability, do they require a special education teacher? Because that's not always the case. So try to find the right match, and then facilitate them. The tutor and being in contact with the appropriate school personnel. At the elementary level, it's 5 hours a week, and which is an hour a day, and at the secondary level, it's 10 hours, which is 2 hours a day. Right now, during COVID, we actually have a smaller number of students on homebound than typical, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But for, I'd say 3/4 of our students, they're doing homebound services virtually. For another quarter, due to significant medical conditions that would not allow them to participate virtually, we have contracted staff through agencies to go into the home to provide services. So we aren't sending our Norwalk staff into homes, so we're contracting because of the specificness of the health concern for the students. And so that could be, we have students with seizure disorders, we're staring at the screen for that long would, you know, be very difficult. So we tried to pair that up. In a regular year, all be in person, but.
Homebound's only offered in the district for medically related absences?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's for students who are absent more than 5 days for a medical reason that the doctor has looked at.
Okay.
Part of the homebound packet process includes a consultation between the doctor and the school nurse, as well as a few years ago, myself and Joanne Malinowski and Dr. Costanzo and some other nurses, we revised the homebound packet to bring it up to date. I think it had been like a decade old. And we included in there a list of accommodations that schools can provide so that doctors can see what schools can do before we go on homebound. So we can, you know, if you have a student with a medical condition, we can do a part day. We could do a late start for a student who needed to have medication during the morning and come in a little bit later. There's a lot of accommodations that we can do, and we wanted doctors to be able to know what we can do prior to homebound, because it is the most restrictive setting in terms of there's not access to friends, to peers, to that kind of thing. So we did what the physicians to know. So once they complete that, they also need to include an end date of when services are going to end, or you can renew your packet every 30 days if it's an unknown, so that we also keep track of our students and nobody goes on homebound forever that nobody knows. We want to keep track of our students and help facilitate that as well. This year we do have less requests for homebound than typical because of the virtual learning option. So for many of our students, it had to do with coming into school, which could be an anxiety issue because that does fall under homebound, or it could be a health issue that would prevent them from coming, but they're able to access the majority of their coursework virtually, so they're not needing that homebound. When a student does go on homebound, they get the work from the classroom teacher, so they're still attached to a class. It's not, you know, it's not like, here you go, you're off somewhere. You still have your teacher, your course schedule, because it is supposed to be a shorter amount of time. And so we want students to stay connected. We want them to be in alignment with the coursework that's happening, because when they come back 6 weeks, 8 weeks, even a quarter later, that they're still on target with the rest of their class. And so the tutor and the classroom teacher work together with those materials. At the high school level, sometimes we do have splits where we might have one tutor that does the ELA and social studies and another does the social science, the science and the math, depending on, you know, we have some students with some very high level science and math needs that we want to make sure we have somebody who's qualified to be able to provide those services. So that's kind of homebound in a nutshell. So what questions can I answer?
I'll let Barbara go first.
Stacey, what's the average time lapse between when a student, it's determined that they need to go on homebound and when we actually are able to provide them with a tutor?
So I would say that from the time I get the homebound packets, that within a week that they're assigned to a tutor.
Do we have data to that effect?
We don't have data. I mean, we could track that. Usually as soon as I get the packets, when so I took over homebound maybe 2 years ago, and since that have a system, so I have all the homebound tutors who are available, and as soon as I get that homebound packet, I send out an email and say, who wants to do this? So usually I hear back that day. So it's within that week that they're able to connect with the parent, with the work and all of that. Occasionally we have more specific needs, so if I need a specific special education teacher, and that might take longer because maybe the teachers already have students and I need to go find somebody else. But I would say on average within that week that they are able to, you know, have a tutor assigned and connect with the parent.
And this new contracting, is that something that we'll be able to have as a resource going forward if we do have a lag in being able to find somebody within our own staff to fill the needs?
Yes, and we have utilized that in the past as well.
I think it would be good to have a data dive at some point, not right now while we're in COVID nightmares, but at some point to have a data dive into the length of time between when a student is identified to have that need and when they're matched.
I can say that some of the delay is often the packets coming from the school and coming to me, or them arriving and not being complete. I do have to send packets back, often because there hasn't been consultation with the nurse. I don't have signed consents, which to me is very important. There's two consents. There's a HIPAA consent and then the general consent to be able to release information. And so that's really important that we get those. So sometimes that delays the process because things aren't completed. And sometimes, doctors don't fill out all the questions that we need them to fill out, and we have to ask them to resubmit that as well.
The duration students have to complete the work. Given the understanding that they're doing work that the classroom they're in is currently working on, is the timeline for them to complete consistent with what the classroom is, or is it?
No, it is extended. And so the tutor actually works in conjunction with the teacher to grade the student for the period that they're on homebound.
And the work they're able to do on homebound, is it only work being done in the class? Or is there alternative, like, if you're just starting ninth grade and you've never stepped foot in the classroom?
Yeah, many of our tutors, because they are certified teachers, they have materials or have access to materials in order to supplement. So they might be working on a subject, and very consistent with the conversation we were having earlier tonight about, what if they don't understand it on the first go around? We'll pull in additional materials to reteach or to teach a concept differently, which is why it's really important as we look at some of those classes in high school, that why we might have splits between somebody who does the English and the social studies and the math and the science, because those math and science people have that expertise to be able to help the students understand it.
But it's a really interesting dichotomy, actually, because you only get 10 hours by state statute. And some things you can do very, right.
Yeah.
And some things you can do very quickly because you only have the one student, there's no classroom management. But you definitely don't have the same amount of hours to be working with that teacher or with that student, and it's a challenge, I think. I think it's a strange law.
Is it mandated or something that we can play around with as far as giving that extra support? Or is it just that,
Well, so even though many of the students, even though they're on homebound, still have contact with the teachers. And still, we've had students who have also kind of fallen between the two, where they might be on intermittent homebound because, maybe during a cold and flu season that they need to have more days home because they're more susceptible. And so they might attend school, and then if they're going to be out for a series of days, then they go on homebound and then they come back. So we try to keep our students really connected so that they still have access to their teachers. We also have some students that also, an earlier conversation with Edgenuity, access Edgenuity. It's not a requirement as part of homebound. So if I'm working on my math credit, myself and the tutor can be the two people who are working on the work. However, we do have some students who want to access that as additional work. And since they do have more time during the day and Edgenuity can be used at various times, they will access that maybe in the evenings or, when they're feeling better, because we have such a, for example, if we have a student who's out because they might be getting chemo treatment, certain times they're not feeling well, so they can't do it, but then they can catch up later on, and so you can do more hours on Edgenuity as well. So
that's one of my questions too. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we just have a little bit of time to get to this last thing. But I hear that a lot of, the course selection, people, and I think I get it now, it depends on the teacher or what the course is, if you have someone available. But just keep that in mind, is that, you know, they're looking, sorry. Don't want everybody dancing.
I think it's important what Cheryl's pointing out, you know, just
Yeah.
realizing the stress of the medical condition before
Mhm.
getting into all the different type of scenarios, you know, that's a stressor, you know, and the tutor you may be seeing, I'm assuming, isn't necessarily a personnel from the building all the time, just a certified tutor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just the course selection is what I'm really hearing, so I don't know, I don't wanna belabor it, but if we have a way of finding out, like, what the kids are interested in, or are we just dictating and saying, this is the course we have because these are the teachers we have?
So.
So maybe that's something to think about, like, you don't have to answer that
Mhm.
now unless everybody wants, I really wanna get into the
Yeah, we need
next
to
thing,
do-
and we
yeah.
only have
Mhm.
like, no minutes.
Yeah.
I think we should, cause we all like to talk a lot, we should limit to
Yeah.
two things.
Just tell Godfrey to shut up.
No,
It
wasn't just you.
So we're doing the Ames one by now, right?
That's what we're
Alright.
supposed to be doing, but I know you have to jet, we've got like 7 minutes.
So,
But I do wanna thank you
Yes.
for your information, thank you so much.
No problem, and please feel free to reach out with any additional questions you may have, be happy to answer them.
That's great, thank you, Stacy, thanks for coming. Do we have time to
We do,
just
we're gonna
to
get
do a
that-
quick,
that
to do a quick?
version.
Well, may I just say also that one of the, I think somebody had asked for, at the last meeting, some information with regard to illustrative math and math and practice.
That's
and
always me.
So there is, so there is a chart. So I think that maybe we would go to Ames Web, and the chart, I think, is pretty Tina put it together, and it's pretty self-explanatory, and you
Can
can
we go
jump.
through it, like, just maybe 3 minutes, just for the people who are listening, that may not have this in front of them,
That's
just
it,
kind of
okay.
quickly,
And
just for the audience.
can we put the math on to next month?
Well, you wanna do that?
We're gonna run out of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what the will of the board is to.
Can I hold this up, can they see? No.
I know.
Let's see how far we get, we've got like, you know, if we get the short version, just something.
Okay, well, we will just go over, because I think we did talk a little bit last time.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, about learning loss. So I just wanna go over, Diane will explain. So we took well, why don't I let Diane just
Okay.
talk, okay, but we need to make this very.
You know,
brief.
the burning question with COVID, with the situation with all students all over, is how is it affecting their learning? And that could be a difficult question to answer fairly, because there's a lot of variables. In our case, we moved away from NWEA because we needed to give an assessment last spring, if you remember, that was remote. We needed to triangulate data to determine who needed to go to summer school. Our special ed department has used, Ames Web for progress monitoring. So he says, let's take a look at using Ames Web across the district, so we have one platform for benchmarking. So that's what we did this fall. So when you measure learning loss, you just have to keep in mind there are a lot of different variables. First, we were asked to take a look at kindergarten and first grade. And I'd say, as students move from kindergarten to first grade, we're looking at the early literacy composite scores, so it gives you a broad picture of where the students are in their early literacy skills. And in fall of 2019, our students used DIBELS. And we matched their results to first grade students this fall. We had 780 matches. And there's different jargon, but it's relatively close to the same thing. We talk about the risk level of students when we talk about Ames Web. And we talk about at or above benchmark, below benchmark when we talk DIBELS. So our DIBELS students in kindergarten, 61% were at or above benchmark. That's where we want them to be. In comparison to our first graders, when they took Ames Web, 40% were what we call low risk. A low risk student has more than an 80% chance of meeting their spring targets. So they're in a good place, as well as students that are at or above benchmark.
And
So what
Diane-
is that? There's a decline of 20 points.
That's right, but these are the same children.
The
We want-
same children.
we want to say from
Actually, in
kindergarten.
fall of 2019, we tested 800 students and almost the same number of first graders. But, you know, they were different students, but in terms of matches, we got 708 matches, which is very good. Another thing to consider, in kindergarten, when these students were tested, they were all tested face-to-face. 77% of the students in first grade that we're looking at matched were face-to-face, and the rest were remote. So we were able to use the instrument remotely. Okay, so that's early. So, as I said, if you go to the next page, we're still looking at reading, but we're looking at current fifth graders who took Ames Web in the fall with their matched spring scores when they were in fourth grade. You see a comparable situation. Now we're talking, we have two students. This is a better analysis because they're using Ames Web in fourth grade and then again in fifth grade. In the spring, remember, they were remote. In the fall, we had most of them face-to-face, about 28% were remote. Again, you see a dip in that low risk, and we want students to be in that low risk area. Current sixth graders, when they were tested as fifth graders in the spring, that's the next, you see that there was a decline about 12 percentage points in that low risk. And another thing to consider, if you look along way to the right, you see change in risk factor. About 3/4 of these students were in the same risk factor, whether it's moderate risk, low risk, or high risk. There was a risk increase, about 20%, and a risk decrease, that's what you'd like to see, about 5%. I mean, it's a reality. I don't think it's a surprise at all. Grade 7, you see the same type of pattern. There's a slightly, grade 7 and grade 8 students had about 11 percentage point decline in that area where we want them to be with low risk. So this gives you a broad picture, but what's the good news though, in current 7th grade and current 8th grade, their risks stayed the same for 80% of the students. And our match, I mean, we've had good participation. I mean, in spite of what's going on, our teachers work so hard to administer the tests. I mean, it's such a credit to our staff. We actually had, and I brought this with me, we had over close to 96% of students in K through 5 test. I was so amazed by that. And in 6 through 8, we had 91%. So, I mean, this is really commendable to the work that we've done.
That's right.
And to the leadership, I have to say, to Janine Goss and Tina Henkel, with the support that they've given, it's just been tremendous. Now, taking a quick look at math. In the spring, we only tested math in grades 6 through 8. So when we're looking at match, we're looking at the matches for current 7th and then current 8th grade students. You see the same pattern. A lower percentage are in that low risk area to begin with, but we have a little over 50%, about 55% in each area, and you see, you know, there was a decline in that area. But again, about 2/3 their risk level stayed about the same. So,
You know,
It seems like the younger kids are most at risk.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
And
what we
they-
really lost ground.
And they are coming in to kindergarten in most of the schools with large gaps. But Diane, maybe, I know we wanna go page by page, but I would love you to turn to this page.
And
right
we're
here.
running out of time as well.
Okay, very quickly, by
Whatever.
school. If
You'll
you-
see the low risk,
if you-
medium risk, and high risk.
Yes, so if you look at the low,
That is canceled.
I understand that, but we still have
Okay,
time.
apologies.
oh, do we have 1 minute, Cheryl?
Go ahead.
Okay, so if we look at the first of these blue pages, which is low risk, what you would expect that you would want to see over, in the grades, you would want to see the risk going down. So when you take a look, and I'm just picking, let's see, I'm just picking Brookside, but it's the first one, all right, just for discussion. 33 and a third percent of students, and we tell you the number right next to it, 19 students came in and they are low risk of all of the kindergarten students. And look what happens though, when they go in the first grade, it's 39%, the second grade, it's 49%, the grade 3 is 69%, there's 74%, and 66.7%. So, although they're not all the same students, what it's saying to me is that if the program, the educational program at Brookside is supporting students as they go through the grades, which is good news. And you can see that in several of them. If you, in the interest of time, I mean, we just provided you the chart. There are a couple that are not good news, but you can see where, what the trajectory should be. If you go to, let's see how they stapled it, the high risk, and the moderate, if you turn a few pages, it's in red on top, the high risk. And forgive me, mea culpa, I promise you next time, anything we present will be numbered. But, high risk, let's take a look at Brookside again, just as an example, it's the first school. So, unfortunately, here, let's see, we're looking, well, again, it went down, 42% came into kindergarten in high risk. The number went up in first grade, but then it is going, unfortunately, but it is going down in second grade and third grade and fourth grade. Fifth grade is a little bit of an anomaly. But I think what we like to do is we're interested, of course, in individual students. But what we also want to see are the trends. So if it's a high risk piece, the trend should be that they're going down. And that I wanna know, I mean, as principal of my own school many years ago, I used to say, you give them to me in kindergarten or pre-kindergarten, and by the time they leave, I had a kindergarten through grade 8 school, by the time they leave, I want you to know that if they stay in our program, that our program is educating them, and that they're going to leave our school with all of the academic learning that they were supposed to have. So those are the kinds of trends I take a look at in terms of where the schools are.
And I'd just like to add, remember, this is fall. So the idea is you think of the triangle. So we want to, by spring, we want more students to fill up the triangle in tier 1, and smaller amount of percent of students in tier 3.
And
So that's the goal, so
yeah.
we'll be monitoring progress.
Exactly, and to add to what Diane is saying, that, I mean, when we see it, we will expect those high numbers, or the higher numbers that are coming in kindergarten, when we look at the progress that they've made, to go down. And that's the whole point of this,
I do know, though, just for us to make a mental note, that the schools that pop out as having high risk by the end of 5th grade are also the ones that have the highest poverty rates.
Correct.
And so I think we really need to be, as we're budgeting, very intentional about shoring things up in terms of intervention, like Jefferson, Silvermine, Tracy in particular.
And exactly. And we and of course, when even when we looked at the state data before, you remember the superintendent and Diane showed you that at the last board meeting. I mean, we see that. So what we want to look at is the root cause. We want to find out what it is that we need to shore up. I think that when we look at internal practices in various schools, we will be able to identify practices that need to be changed. I think that, you know, in terms of the equity work that's being done across the district, I would hope and I would expect that both principals and assistant principals are becoming more conscious of some of the practices that they have implemented or instilled in their schools that need to be revised, including grading, including, you know, a number of them, a number of practices. So I'm hoping that with all of the work that the superintendent is leading, you know, in the district and that we're all contributing to, that there will be a change.
Great, can I just do
Sorry,
one
Barbara.
follow-up, which is, if we have this issue K2, and we know they need to be reading to learn by third grade.
Right.
We have this wonderful new opportunity where we're sending devices home with them in the evening and on the weekend. Can we be nudging them towards educational play on their devices over the weekend? I know my kids taught themselves to read on Starfall. I didn't have anything to do with it. But can we make it fun for them so that they view their school device also as an escape and learning becomes fun?
I think that's a good idea to just tell you that my 4-year-old granddaughter, my just 4-year-old granddaughter in Portland, Oregon, is now,
Oh, that's
she's
when my mom
on.
went to college.
My grandmother.
Well, I had the
Very
disparity.
interesting.
But she is at home, she can't go anyplace, she's not in school, you know, her school is closed. She's at home with her parents, and her mother particularly all day. And her mother found there is a Khan Academy, you know, early childhood component. She tells me, because I speak to her and read to her on Zoom very often, she's doing her letters and her word work. And this child is, I mean, she's not in school, so the teacher isn't there to support her. So, but she's having, however it is, I haven't even looked at it, but it looks, she's having fun doing it. And as a result of having the fun doing it, she's learning. And she's very happy, you know, to show everybody what she learned. So we agree, and I think that's, you know, that's a push. And so, you know, we talked about homework at one point. Maybe the homework should be something that is enjoyable, something that's
And I
fun.
think we could connect it to the parent university opportunity too, to train parents
Exactly.
as to what's available and put it on Ralph's landing page for virtual learning resources.
Will do.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Thank you.
Thank you for this, you know, and I'll just be mindful of the pieces we didn't get to. We're
Put
gonna
that on for
touch
next time.
Yeah,
Okay.
because these are also great topics.
Gotcha.
Excellent.
Alright, so a motion, entertain a motion, Barbara, Diana second, all in favor? Unanimous, and we end
Thank
at
you.
5:40.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I graduated from high school in Portland, and